I wish I had some cool sound effects. Maybe I'll see if I can find some. Star Trek Into Darkness countdown. Beginning with Star Trek the Motion Picture. Everyone's favorite Star Trek movie. Everyone's favorite, right? Hands down. Not so much. Not so much. Okay. So... Alright, film number 1. Okay, so it's funny. For me, Star Trek the Motion Picture holds a weird place in the Star Trek land. And if you're a fan of the original series, this came 10 years after Star Trek's finished. But it also came 11 years after 2001 came out, the film. And then 2 years after Star Wars. So it places it in a really weird spot for science fiction film, you know, and I don't know how much TV to film stuff we saw from the 60s to the 70s. Not a metric I know off the top of my head. Other than, of course, Star Trek. So, Star Trek the Motion Picture came out in '79, and it's got quite a bad rap. Like, it just seems to be, people don't really love it that much. And I rewatched all of the movies in anticipation for the 2009 release of Star Trek, and including watching Star Trek the Motion Picture for probably the first time in my adult life. And I was kind of like, wow. Like, I was like, you know, this is really slow. This is really not that great. This is really weird. And I actually think it was so long ago that I watched it on my little TV, which is like, literally, it's like, I can hold it like this. Like, it's like 13-inch TV. I carried it home. Whereas I have, like, now I have, like, you know, a big TV, like most people actually do. It's not that huge, but, you know, I got it. I think I got it during the Star Trek, my other Star Trek rewatch. But the weird thing is, my previous remembrances of Star Trek the Motion Picture are pretty shady. Like, I remember watching it when I was a kid on VHS, sitting around with a whole family, sitting in the family room, the cold blue floor under my legs. Like, you know, that's only because there's so many of us. I like to sit on the floor, so anyway, it doesn't matter. But so it was really, so my memories of it then are really like, I didn't understand it. I was too young to understand it. And then when I watched it the last time, I just felt like, wow, this is slow. And then when I watched it this time, I'm like, tried to give a bit more leeway. Tried to give it a bit more, you know, let it be a film as opposed to, you know, all this lead up to or the beginning of the Star Trek films. Like, let it just be on its own and be a film. And, like, I enjoyed it much more than I was expecting. I really thought it was one that I'm going to have to sit through this if I want to do this marathon. And I'm like, actually, there are some interesting things in there, and I can actually totally understand why it is not a real fan favorite. It is a lot slower, but it's a lot more serious. One of the things I realize oddly about some of the Star Trek films is they're actually not that serious. I want to go as far as to say they're campy, but humor is a part of Star Trek. Like, there's just no two ways about it. So this one, I think maybe there's a, you know, McCoy is like pretty much the only comic relief you get, and it's in his a lovely surly manner, and some Scotty stuff too, of course. But it's pretty serious, and the theme, like the plot, it's a big mystery, and it's pretty high concept. So, and that often isn't necessarily the case with the show. Sometimes it is, but, you know, when it's something that is a TV show, if you don't like that one, well, the next one might be a funny one, or the next one might be an action-y one. So you just, when it's a film, there's more invested, and so I think these days they try and sort of have a little bit of everything, so everyone's going to be happy. And I'm like, I don't know, why don't you just decide what you want it to be and then make it that? Not that a little bit of everything can't be fun. Often, like, you know, mashups can be a little bit of everything. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Back to Star Trek the Motion Picture. So I think it has its challenges right from the get-go in terms of the seriousness in tone, but I actually kind of like that because it really feels like it's like the stakes are high, like it's in space and it's a dangerous place, and you don't always get that from the series. It's funny, I was talking about it with my sister and her husband before I watched it, and we were talking, like, and that came up, and I'm like, that's really true. So it's probably not my idea, it's one of their ideas, but it's true. You know, it's dangerous out there, and dangerous things happen, and things go wrong, and like, that's, you know, Star Trek is pretty, sometimes a lot is, especially in the series, they can be very safe. They can be a little Brady Bunch in terms of, at least the original series and Next Generation, in terms of you know, everything gets, you know, at the end of the show, you know, it was interesting, but not that much has changed. But you know, the mystery in here is pretty heavy, and a lot of the time is sort of spent with the Blues Brothers format of sort of getting the band back together, you know, so a lot of, you know, it takes a lot of time to get where it's going, and then it takes a lot of time, you know, still trying to be there, and so it's just, you know, you don't just walk right in there and you're like, all right, here we are, we're, you know, like, so no, it takes time, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but even all of those steps, it's actually pretty adversarial as well, and that makes it hard to, you know, who are you rooting for? Who are you sympathizing with? Who are you cheering for? And it doesn't make it very clear that way either. So that was kind of weird. I will have to say on the big pros, not that any of those are actually cons. I just noticed that there are differences, and they're not necessarily popular choices and easy to root for and cheer, you know, for. So I think that might be some of why it's a harder, you know, a harder sell. But I love that Majel Barrett is in it as, like, Dr. Chapel. I was like, that is so cool. I totally didn't realize it. And she's actually, in the opening credits, she's just listed in the co-starring with, you know, with, you know, James Doohan, you know, like, all the supporting cast. Like, so I was like, wow, that's really cool. And, because I love her, and it's so cool to see her on Next Generation. I just, such a different character, of course, but anyway, so that was neat. And then there's some things that I was actually really surprised at, things like the theme music. It's like, wow, that's like the Next Generation theme music. Like, it's like that's the same music. So like the opening sequence, title sequence of Next Generation is the opening. It's like, because I've been doing a rewatch of the Next Generation, so I know it very well. I know it very well anyway. But I'm like, wow, that's exactly the same thing. One thing that was weird though, it intros with a huge 3-minute orchestral score, just like you would see in a musical, which maybe makes sense because it was directed by Robert Wise, who did The Sound of Music and West Side Story. I'm like, that is just what an odd choice for Star Trek. I don't know, but putting that together with the opening score, which is cool because it actually sort of has, you know, pieces of the score. It's very, you know, it's very much like a musical, which was kind of neat and not how I think of Star Trek. So that was cool. But and there are the things I love. I actually loved a little bit more the costumes. They're very, you know, 70s in like, which is so weird when something's futuristic, but it's really of its time. I thought it's one of the things I love about science fiction. But, you know, with being like all white or all beige or all baby blue jumpsuits and stuff like that, and with the collars that go down in the V, I like that a lot. And so there was things like, although they have weird belt buckles, it's like a belt buckle but there's no belt, or maybe the belt's like behind the shirt or something, I don't know. So there's some weird stuff like that, but the costumes are, you know, they're not as forgiving as some of the regular costumes, so I felt for the actors for sure. And we had some new characters in this as well, which is always a challenge when you're dealing with something with such a rabid fan base. But I think they did okay, but some of the adversarialness is there, and then the Ilya character is very, I had to go and look up, because I'm like, what is with it? Because there's part of it that I never understood with her character, so I had to go look it up, and it's not, to me, it's not clear in the film, and maybe it's in one of the other cuts. I watched the sort of one where you don't choose anything different version, although it does have, there's extra scenes. There's tons of extra scenes. There's 5 additional scenes from the theatrical version and 11 deleted scenes from the TV version. That's actually how I might have seen it. I might have seen it when it was on TV. That's probably most likely, as opposed to being on VHS. I bet you that's what it was. So, yeah, so some of the character stuff was a bit you know, as I said, new characters can be challenging in something with a rabid fan base. Anyway, so I like, it's weird. Like, I feel kind of weird saying that I enjoyed it much more than I expected. I'm not sure how, in terms of all of the films, it'll hold up. I'm pretty sure. It's so funny. When I did my intro, I said that I wasn't going to make a list of what I consider my favorites from start to finish, and then I did. I totally did. And I tucked it in my collector's edition thing, and in there was my notes from the last time. I am so set in my ways. What can I tell you? So I have, I'll have what I think are my favorites going into this marathon, what were my favorites last time, and then what will be my favorites after watching all of them again. I usually leave the new one off that because usually it's too fresh to have any kind of, the bias of recency is just way too high on it. So I don't know. I quite liked it. I liked the space stuff. It is, you got to be in the right mood because it is pretty long. But I'm like, I don't know. I think it would take a long time to get somewhere in space. And like they do some stuff in this one that they don't often do in the series, and there was, I really love the characters, and though I would have to say some of them were a bit of a challenge, especially Kirk in this one. He's sort of a big root of the adversarialness, and Kirk's someone you're going to be behind. Like, you're rooting for him, and in this one it's a little hard to because he appears a little selfish, which I think is a battle, maybe a battle of representation of that character over time. But it's a hard way to start off a film series 10 years removed from the TV series. I would more want to go into it just being like, yes. So, anyway. So, by default, Star Trek the Motion Picture will rank number 1 out of 11. But I don't know. I think I do remember. I think I placed it sort of like in the bottom middle. But I don't know. It kind of grew on me. And I liked high concept stuff. And this is a little more high concept over, character driven or conflict driven, which a lot of the other films are, and is a lot more easy to glom onto and stuff, and especially to rewatch and stuff. So, but I don't know, I thought it was good. It was engaging, I thought it got me thinking philosophically, that's always a good thing. So, anyway, that is number 1, Star Trek the Motion Picture in the Star Trek Into Darkness countdown. You can always join in. Sean from MediaAssault is going to play along. Hi, Sean! Thanks for playing along. And Brian, the Movie Freak 226, he also mentioned it's one of his channel goals to review all of the Star Trek films. So we'll have to keep in touch and watch his films and watch Sean's vids and see how they enjoyed watching or rewatching or enjoying for the first time Star Trek the Motion Picture. Alright, thanks so much for watching, folks. Wrath of Khan is up next. Oh my goodness, where's the stop button? Stop.